for Tua.
Let's get to the news tonight. Raheem Mostert will not be playing in this game. Ruled out. He didn't practice this week. He's dealing with that chest injury, something to keep an eye on for sure. Jeff Darlington is in South Florida ahead of tonight's game. And, Jeff, all eyes now turn to Devon Achane and his availability tonight. He's also dealing with injury. What do we know there?
Well, we know it's pouring rain, Laura, so that's great. We just lost some power out here.
Goodness.
Got no lights on me. You know, that's not great. But I'm still
Our pets' heads are
active for
falling
tonight,
off.
unlike Raheem Mostert, who's not playing because of the chest injury. But we do know that Devon Achane will, in fact, play. That, according to sources who say that, aside from anything that were to happen during any kind of pregame warm-ups, his ankle is good to go. A day ago, he was on the practice field. You see him out there right here. It was a walkthrough. It was about 75% speed, but he was able to go, did not miss any repetitions. So we do anticipate Devon Achane getting a full workload, and in fact, perhaps even more than a full workload considering that Raheem Mostert is out of this game. So pretty nasty out here at Hard Rock. We'll see if it clears up at all. You know, it matters to me, but probably not to the rest of the team.
Yeah, no, it matters. I mean, Jeff, you're under shelter, so I don't know what you're complaining about. You are a little backlit, though, so we'll see if we get the lights turned on you there.
A little backlit.
You're joining us in just
a
little bit.
I care about my vanity right now. So.
I'm aware. Achane, by the way, had 181 scrimmage yards and 3 touchdowns in 2 games versus the Bills last season. Jeff was just still talking there. Marcus, how important will it be for Achane to be out there tonight?
Jeff, shut the hell up. Let us get to the show.
I'm just barreling over him. I'm like, we're moving on. Go ahead.
Nah, that's my guy, man. Look, we saw last week with the swing passes and the creativity, obviously, in space of Devon Achane. And I think that's an element, obviously, when they lost him last year, that they lost. He had an injury. But we saw it come to fruition against the Jacksonville Jaguars on these swing passes and yards after the catch. But more importantly, a year ago, I had a conversation about what's going to be the answer when Tua needs to extend plays. I think this is it. I think this is a big part of it by just getting the ball in this dynamic back's hands with all of this speed so he can create offensively. I think he's a big part, obviously, of what they do in the run game. But the passing game is where he may end up being most effective as the second leader in receptions in game 1.
Yeah, I think it's about the receptions, but it's also about the way that they create big plays using Devon Achane, whether he's a part of the route combination of the play or he's not. They do so much with the eye candy with Achane, with getting him out to a flat, allowing layer routes to that side of the field or across the middle of the field. And obviously when he has the football in his hands, he's extremely dynamic. He's another one of those players that allows Mike McDaniel to be versatile from a formation and personnel standpoint. Now, if you lose him and you have to go to Jeff Wilson more, who's not as good as a pass receiver, who's not as fast or explosive with the football in his hands, I think it does change the way defenses can play against you. But they're still going to be Waddle, they're still going to be Tyreek Hill, and maybe they're used more in the screen game, the jet sweep game, or even Tyreek Hill being a part of the backfield.
Yeah, if I was Miami, I would run the heck out of the football tonight.
Yeah.
Absolutely pound the football. One, I don't really want to single up my offensive linemen versus Rousseau and Von Miller. Both of them started to heat up in the second half last week. 2, Taron Johnson being out for Buffalo is a big deal. He plays every snap. He's one of the best nickels in football. The reason why they can play nickel 5 defensive backs so much is he's so good at both things. That's not easily replaced. And if I was Miami, I would line up in all my different personnels, 21 personnel, 2 backs, 1 tight end, 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends, and pound the football. And if you're going to play with a backup nickel in the game, you're going to get a heavy dose of either of our backs. I think Buffalo's going to continue to play their shell defense, 2 safeties, and I think this is a 35 to 40 carry game for the Dolphins offense.
I could see them also using their fullback, Dan, Alec Ingold, because of what you described. Something we saw last year, the Bills' defense, even when they had Taron Johnson, at times struggled to defend teams that ran the ball out of heavy personnel because they played so light. My perspective, when the Bills are in coverage, and they will a fair amount in this game, what's so important, and you really saw this on display against Jacksonville last week with Miami, you have to change the picture on Tua Tagovailoa. I thought the Jags did an excellent job of that. They actually disguised coverage at the second highest rate in the NFL last week, showing man, playing zone, spinning their safeties. That's a defense to keep an eye on. The Bills are capable of that as well, or they have been in the past, but there's a lot of youth back there. Yeah. You lose Taron Johnson, who's your best player in the secondary. The job gets a little more difficult, but if they play straight up, they will get burned through the air.
Yeah, we're going to make our game picks later on, too, so stay tuned for that. Marcus, you were putting a heart up when Dan was talking about running the ball. I just wonder why.
I just never thought I'd hear today he said run it 35 to 40 times. This is a breakthrough on NFL Live today. I don't know I don't know if people really understand how emotional I am about this, man.
Here's the thing, though.
Come on to the wild side, Dio.
Here's the thing. I was the quarterback that wanted to run the ball 35, 40 times a game. I don't want to chuck and dunk.
Don't let me
you
throw
want
it.
other quarterbacks to really throw it. Dan, come on. Don't underestimate your own arm. All right, let's bring Jeff back in here. The biggest story in Miami, Jeff, over the last week was the pregame detainment of Tyreek Hill for a traffic violation. How has the team dealt with it while also getting ready for a football game on a short week?
Well, Laura, it really is interesting because this is a short week, which is a challenge for any NFL team, but coming off of something that was as emotionally taxing on this team. And by the way, not just Tyreek Hill, but his teammates as well. Now, one thing I should point out is that Tyreek spent 14 minutes speaking with the media yesterday, a day before the game, and there wasn't one question about football. But Tua Tagovailoa made very clear that this is not something they simply wanted to brush aside. They didn't want to ignore it this week and just focus on football. They felt like it was more natural to talk about it. I will say Mike McDaniel said he believes fully in his team's ability to stay focused when it comes to the task at hand. And Tyreek Hill, during those 14 minutes, while not fielding football questions, did mention the fact that he believes that it is his job. It is his lifeblood to come out here and play ball. That is what he does, and that is what he believes he will do against the Bills tonight.
Just about 4 hours till week 2 kicks off.
Hours? Arrows?
Thanks to Jeff for the latest from Miami. Just a couple hours from kickoff here. Time for a same-game parlay presented by ESPN Bet. Let's get RC in here. Let's start with Tyreek Hill. Over under 99.5 receiving yards tonight for him.
Listen, I think he's going to go over. It's obviously a little bit of rain, but this is a retooled sort of backfield for the Buffalo Bills without their top player in Tyron Johnson. We already know they had to replace Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, and they were banged up on the outside as well. I expect Tyreek Hill to have a day, especially if Achane is somewhat limited.
Josh Allen over under half an interception against this Dolphins D.
Doesn't that mean he's just going to throw one? Yeah, I think he'll throw one, but he's still going to go crazy. Josh Allen has to take over this game. They understand it's going to start with James Cook, but it's going to finish with Josh Allen. So that means putting the ball in harm's way with Javon Holland and Jalen Ramsey. But even with that, I expect Josh Allen to play well, even though the Miami Dolphins will get their hands on one of these footballs.
We spent a lot of the offseason talking about the Bills' commitment to the run game. Over under 14.5 rush attempts for James Cook tonight.
It better be over, right? You saw the weather out there.
Ooh.
That ain't, hey, let Josh cook type of weather. It's let James cook. See what I did there? James Cook needs to get opportunities at the run for Joe Brady to have this offense with some sort of balance. And that's what leads into the play action where we know that Josh Allen can be deadly, whether he chooses to throw it or use his legs if pressured. I think James Cook is a major factor tonight, and he'll have over 14.5 rushes.
Man, RC, that's why they pay you the big. But tonight, week 2 begins. Tua Tagovailoa arriving there in the wet conditions in Miami. I just checked the weather forecast, and it looks like could be another storm coming in around 7. So we'll keep an eye on that. We're about, 3 and 23 minutes until kickoff. Let's bring Adam Schefter back in here. Adam, lots of issues at running back for the Dolphins tonight. Yeah. And you mix the weather in there. Let's start with Raheem Mostert. What do we know?
We know he's out tonight, Laura. He's not going to play. The Dolphins already have ruled him out due to a chest injury that could sideline him beyond tonight. It could be a multi-week absence. We'll see how that plays out, but they're not going to have their speedy, productive running back tonight, and that will mean there should be more opportunities for other players like Devon Achane, who's listed as questionable for tonight's game. Now, he posted on Instagram images of himself in uniform with Thursday Night Football ahead, so it's looking like he will play tonight, although he was listed as questionable 3 times last year and failed to produce in any of those games. We'll see how productive Achane is tonight, but he certainly should be out there, and they'll be up against it tonight because the Bills have been dominant against the Dolphins and dominant on Thursday Night Football. Josh Allen has not lost on Thursday Night Football. You see his record there, 6-0 on Thursdays. He's been tough to beat. He's been tough to beat against the Dolphins. And you mentioned the weather. That'll be another factor tonight. But Josh Allen will be the focus of the Miami defense. He was the reason that they were able to come from behind last week against Arizona. And he will be the player that Miami's defense will be keying on this evening.
Ooh, yeah, they better. Josh Allen, by the way, 15-6 in primetime games. All right, there have been 75 instances of a quarterback starting at least 10 games against a division opponent since ESPN introduced total QBR in 2006. Josh Allen's 77.2 QBR against the Dolphins is the fourth highest of any of those instances, trailing only Peyton Manning against a pair of AFC South opponents and Patrick Mahomes against the Raiders. Mina, what should the game plan look like for the Bills offense tonight?
Yeah, well, one thing I'll start off with is what we've been talking about, which kind of how do you get to your explosives, right? And I think that the way the Bills can do that against Miami is how Jacksonville did against Miami, which is come out in 12 personnel, 2 tight ends in the field, which they lived in, by the way, against Arizona, and hit play-action shot plays off of that. That's how Jacksonville got Miami. I think Buffalo can do the same. I do expect a healthy dose of James Cook, both on the ground and as a pass catcher. Another thing that really caught my eye in that Week 1 game against Arizona was just how democratic the offense was. More than 8 players got 2 targets, which only happened once with Buffalo last year. I think that's the right approach also against a Miami team that has a lot of good players in the secondary, but also weaknesses that I think Buffalo can exploit.
Well, I'm going to steal Ryan Clark and Mina Kimes' talking point. I agree. 12 personnel on James Cook.
Get your own talking point.
The 1-back, 2 tight end stuff, it's what Joe Brady, their offensive coordinator in Buffalo, started to implement last year, and we saw it really show itself in Week 1. Kincaid and Dawson Knox, if they're going to leave nickel on the field, which Arizona did last week, and I like that there's a multitude of runs. They pull the tackle, and both tackles in Buffalo are capable of pulling, and then James Cook getting downhill, and you have bigger bodies blocking smaller bodies. Buffalo has the ability to get in different formations. I love the fact that they implemented some motion. Last time it was tackle pull. This time it's weak zone. They've got bigger people blocking little people, and I loved that from their offense. And if you point to last week's game, both Ryan and Mina mentioned this, that's what Jacksonville did. They put their 2 tight ends on the field. Miami stayed in nickel, meaning they kept an extra defensive back in the game, and they just pounded the football. Now, this is what we call duo, a bunch of double teams, but I think it's a massive advantage for Buffalo tonight because we got to remember, Miami, no Bradley Chubb, no Christian Wilkins. Jalen Phillips still coming back off injury. He looked good last week, but that's something that Jacksonville was able to exploit last week, and I fully expect Buffalo to try to do the same tonight.
What I love about what Dan said earlier when we were talking about why quarterbacks didn't play extremely well was that you have to stick to the run. That's
Correct.
what Josh Allen and Joe Brady have to do. It's not just about calling the runs and expecting that they'll pop right away. It's being consistent enough to allow leaks and cracks to start and allow James Cook to get in the second level and also get in some space and break some big yards. I want to see who steps up outside of James Cook and Josh Allen with the occasional run to provide some big plays. We did see Keon Coleman catch a back shoulder fade in the high red zone, Shakir on the quick screen, or we got to see Mac Hollins across the middle. Who's going to be able to create a play down the field, and how will Joe Brady scheme those things up? I believe that it starts with the run, but if you're going to take a play action shot for the Buffalo Bills, you don't have Brian Thompson Jr. that can push it down the field with his speed. So how do those things come together schematically?
One thing, since Joe Brady took over as the OC, the Bills have averaged 36 rushes per game, the most in the NFL. So history tells you that could continue. Go ahead, Swagoo.
Let me go in my jacket pocket because everybody talked about offense. I'm going to go defense. Miami Dolphins, your defensive tackles, and this is what Buffalo is going to do to people all season long. They under the most pressure as any other defensive player on your football team.
Okay.
One, from a play recognition standpoint, when it comes to the run game, so many times you see them get displaced or behind blocks, and that zone run scheme with James Cook is able to take advantage. You have to make him stop his feet. The second thing is, when you do get those extended plays, like we saw last week when Jacksonville was actually able to make when they were able to cause a fumble on Josh Allen, it was because the D tackles kept him in the center of the pocket. So I think it really boils down to that for me. I looked at everybody else. Josh Allen is going to make his plays. James Cook in this scheme is really, really good with the run game. Your 2 D tackles are under the most pressure in these games against Buffalo now with this iteration of their offense.
Well, tell them, Swag. Hey, ESPN Analytics projects that the matchup between the Bills and Dolphins will be the closest of the week. We're starting week 2 off great. Dan, who you got tonight?
I'm taking Buffalo. I think it's going to be a high-scoring football game. I like those tight ends. I really do. I think both Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox are integral parts of this team in the pass and the run game. And I think James Cook is a guy, Laura, you mentioned it, ever since Joe Brady's taken over, they run the football. I think he gets upwards of 20 to 25 touches tonight. And as much as I love Josh, star of the game.
I also think it's going to be high scoring, but I'm on the other side of this, in large part because of the absence of Taron Johnson for Buffalo. I think Jalen Waddle is just going to go absolutely crazy from the slot in this one. So give me a high scoring game with Miami barely edging them out.
I'm going Buffalo. I'm going the Bills as well. Like I just said, the pressure that these D tackles are under, obviously this run game and the balance, I think this is the way forward for Joe Brady. I think this is the best way for Buffalo to try to dominate games, even with time of possession. And then we know when the plays are out there for 17 to make, he'll make them either with his legs or his arm. I think it comes down to that.
You know, Swag, I like your score, but I like the other team, and I think the Miami Dolphins are going to win. The one thing I love about Miami is that they can go to 2-man routes, which allows max protection for Tua Tagovailoa. The 2 biggest plays were 2-man routes with max protection, keeping Russo and Von Miller off Tua and letting them work that rework secondary.
All right, I'm picking the Dolphins, too, and a lot of it has to do with just this Bills defense that's depleted in so many ways. Mina mentioned Taron Johnson. I think that's huge. I think Miami will be able to do just enough to exploit that side of the ball and get a huge win at home. Maybe the conditions factor in as well. Once again, I agree with Mina. Maybe it's because we're the turtleneckers out here. We've got our turtlenecks going here today.
We're not there yet with weather.
What? Yes, we are. It's fall, Dan.
No, we're not there yet.
It was kind of cold in San Fran. I'm not going to lie. I was scared about Philly.
But I just looked at the forecast. It's like 81 degrees.
Who do y'all think got the advantage in the rain? Who do y'all think has the advantage in the rain?
Miami.
I think Buffalo.
Buffalo a little
Matthew
bit.
McConaughey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
James Cook.